the research roundup. We have had an incredible year in terms of the closing of the Embolden trial. We filled up that trial in 18 months. Shout out to our amazing community. We worked really hard. We have an approved therapy for gene therapy for MLD in the EU. We have a couple of new companies coming into space. So to begin this discussion, is the plan, Melanie, we're going to show the Dr. Orchard video and then CJ?
We're going to introduce CJ. CJ is going to introduce the panelists. Pam will speak, and then Dr. Orchard, and then we'll have a little Q&A.
Got it, boss. Melanie's telling me what to do. Okay, so Dr. CJ Malanga is a pediatric neurologist who actually trained a bunch. So he has a joke. He has a neurologist joke, which is, I'm a gray matter guy, but most of my friends, I have a lot of white matter friends.
Well, my best friends are white matter guys.
Some of my best friends are white matter people. So CJ has worked with a lot of folks in our community, Dr. Ali Fatami, Dr. Florian Eichler, a lot of names that we already know. But he's also the global lead running the Embolden study for our community. And CJ has graciously agreed to lead this discussion. He's going to introduce a video. I also want to say that Paul Orchard at the University of Minnesota, who will be speaking in a pre-recorded segment, is not related to Orchard Therapeutics. That is also a very common confusion, that Dr. Orchard owns Orchard Therapeutics and that he's very rich and he doesn't need to do any work. That's not true. So I'm going to hand it off to CJ, Dr. Malanga, and then we'll get the discussion going.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Maria, for that very generous introduction. So my name's CJ Malanga. I am an MD, PhD pediatric neurologist. I trained here in Boston at Mass General, where I was the chief resident when Florian Eichler came on board as an itty bitty intern, and then helped get Ali Fatemi to come to Mass General to train as well. And then I spent 10 years on faculty at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where I was on the faculty in neurology and pediatrics from 2005 to 2015. At the end of 2015, I made the leap from academia over to the dark side, and I went to work for Novartis for 5 years here in Cambridge, doing early clinical development, particularly focusing on developing new trial endpoints in kids, particularly with motor impairment. And then some other people who I know many of you know, Dr. Norman Barton and Dr. David Whiteman, got their hooks into me at the end of 2020 and recruited me to come over to Takeda, the old Shire, now acquired by Takeda in 2018. So I am now the global clinical development lead for the MLD program at Takeda. I work for Norman and for David. And as I'm also keen on telling the families, as far as I'm concerned, I am the last clinical development lead for the Embolden program, because I know that there has been a number of personnel changes over the past couple of years. I want to echo what Maria said. I think it is, when I came on board, about a month after I onboarded to Takeda, Embolden closed to enrollment. I still can't fathom how the community came together and fully enrolled this study in 18 months during a global pandemic. It's a testament to, the incredible hard work of all the people here at Takeda, which I'm not taking credit for because it was before I came on board, and to the families, to the community. What an amazing accomplishment. So thank you for inviting me to be here today. I guess I'll go ahead and introduce. So Melanie, you said Pam is going to speak first.
Yes. Yep.
Correct. All right. So I'll introduce Pamela Gavin, who many of you know. Pamela has been an advocate in the community for a long time. She is the executive vice president at NORD, the National Organization for Rare Diseases, which many of you are familiar with, and oversees program development for services to support the NORD member organizations and working in the community at large. Pam was introduced to Nord and to ULF actually when her nephew, Trevor, was diagnosed with MLD at about 2 years of age, and has been really tireless in her advocacy for MLD and other rare diseases since then. And I want to thank her for being here today. And Pam, please go ahead and tell us about the home study.
Thank you, CJ. Appreciate it. And thank you, Maria, Melanie, and ULF, and everyone for the opportunity to participate in something that's so meaningful and valuable to the community. I just recently moved and have had trouble with internet access. So all I have access to for slides today are that which is on my computer. And I promised Melanie a few visuals so that folks wouldn't have to just look at me. So I think I can just show you, and if I do a screen share, perhaps I can show folks the image of the home study where you can find more information about it on Nord's website. But I just wanted to spend a few minutes sharing with you a little bit about the study, how it came about, what we're trying to accomplish, and encourage people to learn more about it. And hopefully, if you're interested, participate. The home study came about through a collaborative grant, Nord working with the FDA, and in particular, the Center for Biologics, CBER, and the opportunity to look at a particular rare condition through the lens of an observational study was presented to us. And personally, I was super thrilled and excited that the FDA chose MLD as the condition for which this pilot was developed. It's really a testament to what's happening in the community with organizations like Takeda and others, and amazing researchers around the world who are working on therapies for people living with MLD. So it was terrific that FDA chose MLD as the disease to study. And the idea behind this particular study is a pilot. It's runs for 12 months of engagement with patients and caregivers and families. And it is an opportunity for the study team to come to you all wherever you live. You don't have to travel. And it's through video and telephone conferencing. Nord sends you a tablet that you can use, keep after the study is over. And there is a mobile app that the FDA has developed. All ways for you all to engage in a study where your experiences living with with a MLD are accumulated. You submit that information and it happens over a 12-month period. And you work with a research coordinator at Nord named Josie, who's an amazing nurse who's worked with MLD patients and actually does that part-time. So she's a research coordinator and she meets with you all virtually over Zoom and walks you through the process, helps to collect the information. And at those other times, so every 3 months, so 4 times you'd speak with Josie. And in the interim, if you wanted to submit information about your experiences, then you can do that through the mobile app as well. It's very, very simple. And the idea behind this is to capture information about patients and caregivers' experiences living with MLD in a way that reduces the barriers and the challenges. We know how challenging it is to live with a condition like this. And we're excited that FDA is interested in piloting and proving that this kind of study could work, that we could capture observational data in a format that meets the regulatory requirements. So we say a regulatory grade, and it's really a way to put patients and families and caregivers front and center and engaged in the drug development process. It Doesn't mean that they can't participate in other studies, whether it be with amazing institutions around the country and clinicians and researchers passionately dedicated to MLD. It doesn't mean that they can't participate in studies that other organizations, such as biopharmaceutical companies, are conducting. This is an enduring resource that will be made available to the community after the study is over. But speaking about the study being over, once the 12 months worth of information is captured, a de-identified copy of the data is provided to a group that will analyze the data and present it to the FDA. So the FDA doesn't know who's participated, doesn't want to know who's participated. It's just really an opportunity to learn and hope pilot this as a model and a method moving forward for other rare diseases. So MLD gets to be a pioneer once again in this particular space. We have recruited about 11 participants altogether, and we welcome anyone of any age, any patient of any age, to participate, any caregiver, family that is interested to participate. And we're looking to have at least 15 to 20 participants would be the ideal minimal range. So we're encouraging people to join us in this effort and create an enduring resource for yourselves as well.
Pam,
thank you.
Pam,
sure.
Pam, I just got a question. I wanted to confirm before I answered it. Are non-American families permitted to participate?
Yes, they are.
Okay, wonderful. So Ademir, yes, absolutely.
All right, should we go ahead and move on to Paul? Okay, so I'm sure many of you, particularly our Midwestern colleagues and families, know Dr. Paul Orchard. Paul is a professor of pediatrics at the University of Minnesota. He's the medical director of the Inherited Metabolic and Storage Disease Program based out of the Division of Blood Marrow Transplant and Cell Therapy. Paul is one of our leading lights in the use of hematopoietic stem cell transplant therapy and other cell therapies for inherited metabolic diseases, is very interested in combination therapies, looking at outcomes and exploring methods to modify the transplant process to mitigate some of the toxicities. As those of you who know Dr. Orchard know, Paul is almost pathologically modest. And so I would like to take this opportunity to sing his praises. He is just a tremendous colleague and a tireless advocate for the community. Unfortunately, Paul couldn't be with us in person today, but I'm happy to introduce this video. Jose, could you go ahead and run Dr. Orchard's talk, please?
Orchard at the University of Minnesota. And hello, everyone. This is Paul Orchard at the University of Minnesota. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. And I'd like to focus on opportunities of therapy for metachromatic leukodystrophy and where the field might be going. So we're interested in trying to make transplants better and safer. And there's a couple of different ways we may approach this. Certainly, if we can identify the patients earlier with newborn screening, that's going to be a huge difference in terms of being able to treat patients before they've actually progressed with their disease, because much of that is going to be unrecoverable. So newborn screening is going to be key. We're working on how we might refine the chemotherapy approaches for diseases like MLD. There's a couple different ways that we're looking at doing that. We're working currently on a protocol that allows us to take the cells out that are going to be the primary ones that cause graft versus host disease. And so hopefully make transplant safer. And it also allows us not to have to use some of the immune suppressive medicines that we would otherwise have to use. So that may be beneficial. We're also looking towards, and this will be potentially years down the road, other ways of eliminating the stem cells from the patients that need to get transplanted using antibodies as opposed to using chemotherapy. So that should decrease the risk of chemotherapy-related damage to the organs and especially the brain as the kids go through transplant. I also like to talk about some other therapies. So as people know, intravenous enzyme does not cross the blood-brain barrier very well. So there's been interest in potentially delivering this actually directly into the spinal fluid. And there was an international study called the Bolden study that's now closed, sponsored by Shire. There were 24 patients treated on the study. Again, this is an international study. The patients needed to be less than 30 months of age and they needed to be ambulatory to go on the study. They were treated every other week for 38 weeks. There are 4 cohorts, meaning 4 different dosing regimens. And there was an implanted device, an intrathecal drug delivery device that they used to deliver the enzyme. It appeared that the drug was quite safe, although the delivery devices were somewhat problematic and a number of patients had issues with that. There's some data from what's currently available in regards to this. So they could not show that clinically there was a benefit, but the numbers, again, were relatively small and in these variable cohorts. So they're dosing with various numbers of patients. I think there were 6 patients per dose. It's difficult to show much of an effect. So this is a biochemical effect that we're looking at here. So this is spinal fluid lysosulfatide. And it appears if we look here prior to the onset of therapy that this comes down and stays down. And it appears that the patients that may be getting the higher dose might actually be doing better. So it's potentially encouraging, but again, early and the protocol is not open anymore. It's not clear to me exactly when it might be opening and whether it would be opening with a single dose or in what kind of context. There's a couple gene therapy approaches I also wanted to talk to you about. One is sponsored by Homology. That uses an adeno-associated virus approach. This is still in development too. So this is off their website. They're looking at gene therapy for a number of different diseases, but metachromatic leukodystrophy is listed here. It's still in the vector optimization stage. So it's being tested in animals. And there's some interesting data in regards to that, but it's going to have a ways to go before it'll be available clinically. Just globally to give a sense of how this would work. So there's viruses engineered with aryl sulfatase A gene. The virus, it appears from what I can tell, the virus will be used intravenously, be injected into to the kids. The virus will then distribute through the body, should cross the blood-brain barrier. This is the idea. It may penetrate into the brain and result in enzyme production. So that is the approach that we're looking at for the AAV vectors. I also want to talk to you a bit about the Orchard Therapeutics gene therapy studies. Well, actually, the point of this slide is that OTL-200, or what's called MLD in Europe, is now approved. So the EMA, which is the FDA equivalent in Europe, has approved this for, or licensed it. And so in Europe, the ability to use this gene therapy is readily available. This approach is a little bit different. So here the patients have their blood stem cells mobilized. So there's a couple of different drugs that we use to do that. The bone marrow stem cells generally live in the marrow and not in the blood. So we have to give some of these agents to have those cells mobilized into the bloodstream so we can collect them. That's done. The cells are then shipped for manufacturing. The virus is used to introduce the aryl sulfatase gene into the cells. There's quite an extensive quality control piece that has to happen. It takes 4 to 6 weeks. When that is approved and we get the go-ahead, then the patients would come in for chemotherapy. So it would be an inpatient chemotherapy regimen. Then they would get their cells back. And the idea is that these engineered blood stem cells will get throughout the body, provide cells blood cells that are going to make sufficient enzyme that are going to treat the patients. Some of these cells hopefully will make their way to the brain. I mean, that's the idea, and it will provide sufficient enzyme to stop the progression of the disease. So, and the way these things generally are working, virtually all the gene therapy studies, is the patients need to be followed for an extended period of time. So it'd be 15 years, really, that the patients need to be monitored. So just to summarize briefly, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk, anybody who wants to talk more about these things, feel free to contact me. But it's quite clear to me as a bone marrow transplant person that transplantation as we currently offer it is inadequate. It looks like there may be some utility to the intrathecal enzyme that's not currently available, and there is discussion about how it might be used down the road, whether it would be used prior to transplant or in association with some other therapy is not absolutely clear. As I mentioned, homology is working on the AAV approach, and mirroring data looks like it may be advantageous, but again, that's got a ways to go before we'll be able to apply that clinically. In terms of the lentiviral gene therapy, Orchard Therapeutics, again, has its license for MLD or OTL-200 in Europe. I think I can safely say there are discussions about bringing this to the US, but it's not likely to be licensed anytime real soon. I'm excited to share with you, though, then this is relatively new news, that we've been interested in being able to use OTL-200 here in the US, and we recently got FDA approval for the first compassionate use within the US and here in Minnesota. So we're looking at treating a patient with juvenile disease here in the next few months. So that's an opportunity we didn't have before, and again, we're quite excited about that, but each patient would be considered for compassionate use as an individual. And so it would be important to assess all these patients for the ability to use the gene therapy and whether they will benefit from that. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with you today. And if there's any questions regarding any of this, please feel free to contact me. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thanks to Dr. Orchard for that update, pretty much up to the minute update on what's happening with the trials at this point. I guess I'll go ahead and turn it over to Maria and ask from the audience if there are any questions. Please feel free to drop them in the chat box or just pipe up if you're online. Any questions for Pam, or I can try to field questions that you might want to ask Dr. Orchard if he were here. I can't promise that I'll be able to answer them as well as he could, but I'll do my best. One question we just get, questions from families about the home study. So, Pam, question, how is it different from other natural history studies? Why participate in this one? And how are the questions or the data collected different?
So I'm far from an expert on what all the other home study, natural history studies collect from a data perspective. I'm certain there's overlap. What makes this one different is that this is precipitated by the FDA, and it has been designed to evaluate whether or not data collected in this manner, in an observational manner, remote, if it can take place with a rigor that allows the information to be collected and used by a regulatory body like the FDA in the future, in comparison to data collected about patients who are receiving treatments. So they're very interested in the promise, the future promise of data that collected in this fashion to serve as synthetic controls. I know that's, harder than, it's easier to say than to do. But if we don't try, we certainly miss the opportunity to learn and to refine our approaches in this regard. It's really a difficult decision, and in some cases, folks would say unethical for somebody living with MLD to participate in a randomized clinical trial whereby they get a placebo control. So this is an area of great interest across the community, and we're hoping to move the needle forward and learn from this process. And so the families with MLD can participate in this without having to travel. It amounts to an hour a visit 5 times throughout the year. I said 4, but 4, the first one is really to get you started, to make sure you're registered and up and running.
5 hours a year from the comfort of your own home is very different from packing up the entire family onto an airplane during a pandemic and going to an academic center. So I think the value of that is just obvious. And I would echo what Pam just said. I think the FDA is trying to learn. They are trying to learn that natural history studies are going to be the comparator arm for all of the rare disease therapeutic trials. That you cannot, it seems self-evident to us and to everybody, certainly in the audience, that we can't ask, and we wouldn't ask families to participate, families with children with a progressive degenerative disease, to enroll their children in a trial in which they had a 50% chance of getting a placebo. That, as you said, I'm not afraid to use the language, it's unethical. We are now, all of us, many of us, working to try to teach the FDA about how to use these alternative resources. Thank you, Pam. Another question from Debbie Harris. Do they know the parameters of who might be eligible for the compassionate use authorization gene therapy in Minnesota? Unfortunately, Debbie, I have no insight into that. Maria,
can I help CJ on this one?
Please do.
Because that is a very, that question is filling up the feed. Okay, so it is, it's going to be an evolving process, Debbie. Okay, so right now the treatment is approved in the EU. But it is not approved in the US. So we will continue to see families like the Rileys do compassionate use for pre-symptomatic babies, okay? This trial that Dr. Orchard is referring to is for a symptomatic early juvenile child, okay? So that is what the IND is for. And what that means is that, IND, I'm getting the term right, it is only for this one child in Minnesota. Okay, so we cannot extrapolate anything more except that Dr. Orchard, no affiliation to Orchard Therapeutics, has requested permission to treat a child in the US using gene therapy for a mildly symptomatic EJ child. Do not expect anytime soon to have widespread access to this therapy in the United States. We are not even close to FDA approval. I think it's safe to say that we know that Orchard is working with the FDA, which is why the home study is so important, which is why CJ's discussion about teaching the FDA about MLD is so critical. I think that there is a tendency to view the FDA as an enemy, and I think that, in fact, that's completely wrong. Their job is to protect patients. The last thing they want to do is take a child with MLD and make things worse. They cannot approve a $2 million, as Dr. Adang once so beautifully put it. Maria, we are asking them to treat pre-symptomatic children. No one has said ever in the face of the world, beyond the early gene therapies, let's take a child we think might get cancer one day and give them an exceedingly dangerous, risky therapy. That is what we are asking of the FDA. And this is a huge lift. We're going to get there. I'm absolutely convinced that, keep in mind, only 5% of rare disease have FDA approval. And there's a reason. It's hard. It's really hard. So I'm going to shut up now, but I just wanted to answer that question because I knew CJ wouldn't know the full answer.
Pam, are you seeing the questions in the chat? There's some other questions directed at Nord. I think maybe to talk a little bit about the mission and the scope of mission of Nord as opposed to some of the other organizations that provide more direct care-based resources to families as opposed to Nord's mission. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Certainly. So our mission is like a patch quilt. We're a member organization, and we work in collaboration with our members to support the community at large. We also know that there are many rare diseases for which there are no organizations that exist yet. So we also try to support and represent those communities when we're in the situation to do so, whether it's, advocating on the Hill for X, Y, or Z, or at the FDA, or working with NIH. So unfortunately, there are over 7,000 rare diseases, and the resources that we would like to have don't exist. But partnering with our member organizations like Calliope Joy Foundation, like the ULF, like Crabbe Connect, we kind of divide and conquer. When organizations like those exist, they serve as the front line to patients and families. For often, I know I'm just looking at Maria's on my screen here, and then the things that they're doing to get patients and families around the world travel to participate in studies and things like that. We would be, if we attempted to start a program like that, it would be undermining her work, which is not what we want to do. We want to lift her up. So unfortunately, the resources are slim. So we have to think smartly and partner together. And that's what we try to do. There's never enough resources, never enough hours in the day to help everyone as much as we would like. But we try to connect them to the right resources if we don't have them ourselves.
Thanks, Pam. Maria, Melanie.
Yes.
Are there any other specific questions coming out of the chats that I can help with, or are we going to go ahead and?
I think we can take a break. No offense to anyone. It's been an amazing afternoon, morning, but I think everyone needs to go to the bathroom, take a break. We can reconvene in how many minutes do we have left?
We have an hour left, so maybe we reconvene at 1:40. That's Eastern time, so 8 minutes or so.
So what time is it in I don't know. See, so 40 minutes after whatever hour you are looking at. So 40
back
minutes.
in 7 minutes.
7 minutes, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing, guys. Thank you to everyone. Please, we want you to come back, but we understand that people need to have something to drink and eat. All right, but thank you so much. And we'll keep the conversation going.
Thanks, Maria.
Great work, everyone. Al, we're giving everyone a break because we were running a little bit low. So you have about 6 minutes.
Thank you, Maria.
All right.
Also, Jose, if you're still on, this is the session that I talked to Keely about stopping the recording for.